So I'm really excited about our guest speakers for this morning for two reasons. It's a double blessing for me with having Cody and Michelle come up here to share a little bit of their story. It allowed Annette and I to go over to Great Falls for the youth rally that was over the weekend. And in spite of one of the speakers, it actually was an amazing youth rally. So we were so blessed to be a part of that and then not have to worry about too much for today. So that's one blessing for us. And two, I am just so excited to hear what Cody and Michelle have to share about City of Children, their journey to this point with regards to City of Children, and just because they're just wonderful people. And I love their hearts to serve children, their hearts to serve for the kingdom. And so we are so blessed to have Cody and Michelle Danielson come up to share with us.
Yeah. Is this one on? Can you hear me? I told Michelle I was going to say, do you want fries with that when I was wearing this thing, because that's what it makes me think of every time I see headset.
Is mine on?
Did you push the button?
Push the button. Is that better?
I was very tempted to put some cowboy slides in this presentation, but I didn't do it.
Is mine on now? Okay.
Okay, so first of all, the way we wanted to start this morning was to thank the elders for allowing us to do this, come up here and talk about the City of Children and our journey to this point. And for Scott, it's probably a big deal not to preach. He was probably wishing that he could. He's thankful. He says he's thankful that he didn't, but we thank him for doing that. And then I was sitting out here preparing, thinking about things. I also want to thank each one of you guys because of the grace that you've extended in our lives, and especially in my life in so many ways. That can't go unsaid either. And so I'm thankful that you've allowed us to come up here and do this. So first slide, let's see if I can run this thing. There's a ton, first of all, there's a ton of history in this, a lot of history. It's picture intense. We're going to throw a lot of information at you. We're hoping it doesn't feel like it's coming from a fire hydrant, but there's a whole lot of stuff that we got to talk about. And just to give you a full background on the place, and then how we've been working in it. 2022 is the 50th anniversary of the Church of Christ Ministry in Ensenada. We're going to celebrate that in 2023 because of COVID, and Michelle and I will be taking that over, and we'll talk about that probably more later, or if you want to know more about that, we can. But the City of Children has been around for 50 years. The original director of the City of Children was a guy named Earl Farmer, and he was married to Sue. That started way back in the late 70s. He went down to Mexico and started up two different orphanages there to take care of kids. And there's been a ton of different directors in between. The guy there in the middle, that's Stout. Earl Farmer's up in the top left corner. Really hard to see him, small little picture, but these are all the pictures of the directors who have been there so far. The shoulders that we stand on are giants, that's for sure. Stan and Carol Stout, she's not pictured there, but Stan is. They directed the home for 22 years. They started in 1987 and retired in 2009. Stan was a very rich guy. He lived in California. He ran a brokerage firm. He felt called to go down to the City of Children and take over the orphanage down there. And this is a Church of Christ thing. It always has been, and it still is, and it always will be. It's always been supported by Churches of Christ, mostly across the Bible Belt now, but back then it was mostly churches in California. But Stan and his wife gave up they had a lucrative life. They had a yacht, they all had all kinds of things. They sold it all and left and went down there to run the orphanage and work off of almost no money. And he said in his memoirs, which are online at the citychildren.com website that we'll go over later, if you want to read them, it's very interesting, that there was nothing that he regretted about giving up all of his lucrative, comfortable lifestyle and going down there and doing that. He just died here almost 2 years ago. Just an amazing man and a saint, and everybody knows him. They called him Papa Gordo, which I don't know much Spanish yet, but gordo is like big, chunky, fat. He was a big guy, and they called him Papa Gordo, and he loved that. Really neat guy. We stand on the shoulders of giants.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about what the City of Children does for the orphans. Definitely provide for their physical needs. This is just a picture. A lot of their setup is in a dormitory style, so that top right pic is them, their beds. Some of those kids come in hungry, starved, but they meet all those basic needs. And then also the kids go to school. They go to school off campus, so they're bused in vans to school. School in Mexico is much different than it is here. They go at different times. Some of them are in the morning, some are over midday, others go late in the afternoon, but they're provided with uniforms. And the thing that's interesting is that those kids are often referred to, the kids from the orphanage, by the other kids in the community as the rich kids, because they're cared for, they're clean, they have their needs met. The other thing that, is that next? Yeah. This is obviously an important point. A big thing about the ministry is that teaching these kids the gospel, and so there have been numerous baptisms. These kids attend worship every Sunday, and so that's a big piece of our role there will be to support that as well. And then the Creative Arts and Learning Center was something that was built in 2015, and the kids, they actually have a music band, they can do karate, it's got computers for them to do schoolwork. They meet with a psychologist there. Just a lot of great opportunities that have been provided for these kids. And speaking of the psychological piece, that's the part that has been most recently added. So all of those kids meet with a psychologist initially, and some of them continue to meet with them because, as you can imagine, all these kids come from trauma.
So this next slide is it's a drone video. I took my drone down there several times, and I've flown drone all over the place, and it's probably about 4 minutes long. We're just going to let that play in the background while we keep talking, and it'll give you a good idea of what the campus looks like. This is coming in from the east side. Straight off to the south, obviously, is the ocean. That's a big olive grove right there. One little thing I want to mention about this before I go into my points to talk about, every single bit of concrete you see in that place, of that 60 acres right there, including the fence that goes all the way around it, that's over 6 feet high, 8 feet high, was hand-poured concrete by mission teams that have come down there. Hand-poured with the mixers. I'm talking about the little mixer that's like this big around, and with shovels, and there's a lot of work that's gone into that place, and you'll see that as the video continues. So we're going to talk about the kids who live on campus. There's anywhere from 65 to 150 kids that have been on the campus at once. They have anything from infants all the way up to 13 years old is what they typically take. There's lots of reasons for that. The older they get, the harder it is to incorporate them into the orphanage. When they're 15 years old and they've lived on the street and lived out of garbage piles and they've cared for themselves their whole lives, bringing them into structure is really difficult. So they try to keep their, bringing kids in around under 13 years old. They do want to keep families together. A lot of these kids come in as big families. There'll be 5 or 6 kids in one family, and they want to keep them together, and they want to keep them there until they're 18. Give them the best chance at life. You're seeing some dorms and stuff here right now. That one was a little boys' dorm. That's the younger girls' dorm. You're going to see some stuff up in the corner here. That's the cool part, really neat part of campus where you can kind of take a big look at the whole thing. The kids are brought in by the DIF, which is like the CPS of the United States. And they're all wards of the state, and they come in for many, many different reasons. Most of the time they're neglected or abused or completely abandoned. There's lots of kids that come in that are literally 6 years old and under. There'll be, like 3 kids, 6, 4, and 3, and the 6-year-old is taking care of them, living in a dumpster somewhere out in the middle of nowhere. And the DIF finds them and brings them in, and they've got lice, and they're starving, and they often hoard food and stuff like that. It's really a sad situation.
One of the most recent families that they brought in were 3 teenagers whose mom had died of cancer. The dad was a drug addict and was put into jail, and they were being raised by their grandmother who was physically abusive. And so the 3 of them had run away and were picked up. And actually, when we were just down there this last time, we had done a devotional with the teenage girls, and the young girl, her and I, in our limited communication, she asked for me to pray for her dad. And so these kids are hurting, and it's touching.
Yeah.
So being able to adopt these kids is really difficult. The people in Mexico just don't have the means, so a lot of the kids aren't adopted. And as somebody outside of the country, you can't adopt unless you're going to live in Mexico for 2 years after that adoption takes place. So most of these kids are not adopted. And so the goal of the orphanage is to raise these kids and then release them out after they're adults. And ideally, we hope that they attend college. And if they're going to school, they can stay on the campus of the orphanage as well. Every once in a while, the kids will leave. Like, we'll have kids that leave the orphanage because one of their older siblings becomes an adult, and it's not always the healthiest situation, but you'll have like a 13-year-old whose sibling is now 18, and the 13-year-old doesn't want to be there anymore, and so they'll go and live with their 18-year-old sibling. Or they might find a distant relative that comes up, but ideally, most of these kids will stay. That's our goal. So kids are grouped into similar ages. There's a baby dorm, then there's a younger kids dorm, both boys and girls, older kids, boys and girls, and then a teen boy and girl dorm. And the baby dorm has moms, they have mamas, and the older and younger kids and teen dorms, ideally they want a family, a parent in there, a couple, but the teen girls just have a single mom right now. So they kind of live in groups. The other thing that's really happening right now is a transitional home. So 7 of those girls have turned 18. And I think the board has finally recognized, the board of directors, that that's a gap in the service that we're providing. Those kids turn 18 and often they're not well prepared. And so we're working right now on getting a transitional home on campus, trying to meet those needs, give them some of that education, balance that. We're here to mentor you and support you, but you need responsibility and some buy-in, and so that's definitely something that everybody could be prayerful about for us.
To jump into some of our history now, to get a little bit more personal about things, this started back in 2009. We did a book. At that time, we were the teen group leaders, and we did a book with all of our teens that was called Do Hard Things, that Brianna could speak to. And we went through that book, which challenged kids in a really, I'll just give you an overview, a really quick challenge of go against the cultural norms. Just because you're teenagers doesn't mean that you can't contribute, stuff like that. We took them through that book not knowing where it was going to take us, and we took them up in the mountains and asked them when we finished the book, what do you guys want to do now that you've read this book? And there was a unanimous return back to us saying we want to go on a mission trip, and we're like, oh, well, uh-oh.
Great.
We've never been on a mission trip. We don't know where to go. We talked to Jerry and Paula, who a lot of you know, and who, if you don't, they're the couple right there. Paula's in the red. And they said, well, what about the City of Children? And we didn't know anything about the City of Children, but we called down and talked to Jeff and Natasha Fincher, who were the directors at the time, and they said, there's a group from Pennsylvania that might take you. Am I getting ahead in the slides by telling this story?
No, you're good.
Okay, so Richard Walton was the guy from Pennsylvania who's a big Steelers fan. We hit it off right away. That was a God thing. It was totally a God thing. He came out and visited us, and that was the same time that all 3 congregations were coming together. And he actually preached one weekend, and everything just came together. And we took our first trip. And I think I've been missing slides, though, haven't I?
Right.
Okay. We took our first trip in 2009. We had 14 teens and 5 adults, including Jerry and Paula.
And I think one of the ways that God worked in this is he used the unity of the 3 congregations supporting these youth to help bring unity to the congregations together. So that's pretty amazing how he works in things. And then that gave birth to what we were doing for a while was the selfless ministry. And so Cody and I were like, this heart of service is really good in a time when sometimes we're also give me. And so we worked really hard to find opportunities locally for our youth to serve, and we started in May of 2013 was the first year that the youth across the state actually go before YBC opens up, and they do all the demousing, like cleaning up and all of that, and which then allows the work group that normally was doing that over Memorial Day weekend to actually focus on work projects. And
that kid in the mask up there, that's not a COVID mask. That's when you're cleaning up mouse poop at YBC.
But Jeff Fincher, who was the director at the time that we first went, he actually came in 2012. The Helena congregation hosted a service weekend, and we kind of were encouraged by him and brainstormed about what to do. And then in February of 2014, if any of you remember, there was a ton of you that helped us with this. We hosted the winter youth rally here at South Hills and I went back and looked through our list. There were 41 families that we took meals to that the youth made. We had 3 different stations where the youth cooked, and a lot of you went and helped them deliver those meals. They did some tie blankets. So just kind of this servant heart. And our ultimate goal was to get a City of Children Montana-only team, not having to be coupled. But it takes, most of these teams are 50 people or more, and that's a lot of people for one congregation, and so we were trying to bring the groups across the state together to give us that number.
I've kind of lost track where I'm at in the clicking.
Well, there should be a picture of Sean coming up here. Yeah, these are some of our leaders here in the congregation. Trevor went with us. Donna and Randy were with us most recently. Sean has been there. We've had we've had excellent support from the congregation over the years. We even had a silent auction or a live auction for mohawk buzzing, and that's Jerry Botts giving a good old Sean a mohawk, and the guys that did that, and we had several fundraisers, and just the heart of this congregation has always been an encouragement to us when we've worked with the youth to get them going the right direction.
That brings us up to 2015. I think, did I click too far?
Nope, you're right there.
Okay. I joined the board of directors at the City of Children in 2015, and that's when we really started a closer relationship with the Mexican directors down there named Patty and Ricardo.
Oh wait, this is the slide that because we didn't quite have enough kids to go to Mexico, we offered this alternative trip, and any of you that remember Little Hands Big Hearts, they have a ministry in Honduras for disabled kids, and Tom Anderson went with Cody and a couple of other youth, and so that summer, instead of going to the City of Children, a few of them went to Honduras, and I went on their medical mission the week before these guys came down after that.
Yep, I'm behind in the clicks. And then this was our teams from 2018 and 2019. Am I caught up on clicks now?
I think I should take over the
Yeah,
clicker.
There you go.
Talk about that one.
We're talking about our relationship with the Mexican directors, Patty and Ricardo. They're interesting people. Patty's really, she's got a really difficult personality. She's kind of, how do you say it, like kind of constricting. I don't mean it in a bad way. She was raised at the City of Children, and I actually liken it to my relationship with Diana McDonald, because I can tease Diana and somehow get away with it where other people can't. And it's the same with Patty. I give her lots of grief, and she's okay with me giving her grief, and I don't really know why, but they're great. They're great people. They've been there for 30 years. They've given their entire lives to that place, and we've gotten to know them really well. They've come up here once or twice. We've taken them on the river, taken them up in the mountains. Their youngest son is Esteban. He's on the right. Andres, that's a really old picture of him with us at the City of Children. We've really gotten to know them well. We're really looking forward to working with them. They're amazing people who have sacrificed like we will never know sacrifice.
So during this time that we've been going there multiple times since 2009, so it's been about 14 years that we've been there, we've both at different times felt like maybe there was this pull, that there was something more there for us to do. And I'll let you speak to that.
Yeah, it's interesting how we both have different ideas of what that looked like, and I've tried to identify what that is in my life, and I've always been, I have this strong feeling towards justice, like things being just. And of course it's not always that way because I'm not a perfect human, but there's a really strong pull of that in me. And I can't think of anything that's much more just and much more protective than taking care of abandoned, orphaned kids. And so the very first time that I went there, when you got little kids climbing all over you and just needing to be loved and cared for because they don't have that, it was impossible for me not to fall in love with the place and fall in love with that need to fulfill that. not only for myself, but you get to do that for them. And it's amazing. It's an amazing feeling, and that's really what kept bringing me back.
And I think that was initially difficult for me. Like Cody had a much stronger love for the City of Children than I did initially, but I've grown in that as we've gone over time. And God has given me the natural desire to care for kids, and so I think that's where my heart is just those kids that are hurting, being able to be nurturing and to love on them. The kids that we're with when wearing our masks, those are actually the two boys that we sponsor. Their names are Adam and Alon. They're 7 and 8, and the one boy is always in trouble, so we don't get to interact with him very much, because when they're in Castagato, when they're in trouble, they can't interact with you at all. So he was often sitting on the side the last couple of times we've been there, but yeah, it's good. So then the sister ministry to the City of Children is Baja Mission. So Stan also started this. They are basically planting churches and medical clinics down the Baja Peninsula, and I had the opportunity to go in 2018 on one of those trips, and Kendra came along with me a little begrudgingly as my translator, and but it's a good service, and hopefully we'll be able to continue to actually work with Baja Missions. We're actually flying to Nashville in 2 weeks to have a meeting with Baja Missions as well. Oh, they're so cute. So for those of you that don't know our story, in the fall of 2018, we experienced a major marital crisis that ultimately significantly impacted the church as well. And so for a couple of years, we really devoted ourselves to healing our marriage and the brokenness that was in our nuclear family. We took advantage of both individual counseling and couples counseling. Cody actually took an inpatient intensive therapy period of time, and we both committed to finding numerous individual and spiritual avenues for our personal growth. And there is amazing testimony in our story, and both of us are comfortable and eager sharing that, and this isn't the time for that, but we, if you want to know some real flesh on God working in someone's lives and his faithfulness and his redemption and his love, man, we're happy to share it. So we've been stretched and grown in many ways, and as a part of that healing process, in about mid-2019, we started talking about, what is God's plan for us? And we really wanted to devote ourselves to doing something together in ministry. And we didn't really know for sure what that looked like. We threw around ideas of running a therapeutic
Group home.
Yeah, group home, or maybe having a transition home. Our dream one day would be to have a camp up in the mountains and do therapeutic retreats with kids or families, and always having this heart for youth, though. And then we also knew that Tom, the current director, was going to be retiring in 2022. So then that also caused us to pause and wonder if that was a potential ministry coming up. So, but regardless, we knew whatever direction we were going to go, we were going to need some additional skills, and so we both have been working on our masters in licensed clinical counseling. Cody's about 75% done. I'm just a little over halfway done. And so we've been busy. This is a few more pictures of some of our kids with them. I was supposed to click ahead.
Maybe I should run the clicker.
Yeah, maybe. So in October of 2020, that was a time when we spent just with our kids. We did a rededication and committed to moving forward together in whatever this ministry was. And so we told the board of directors at their meeting in January of 2020 that we were actively considering this. So we spent the next year praying about it a lot, wondering, and God just kept opening doors where we thought they were going to be closed. For instance, Tom was going to retire in 2022. We still have a senior at home in 2022. COVID hit. Tom said, I need another year. I haven't been able to do all the work I wanted to. So now Kellen will graduate this year, and we'll start in 2023. Housing worked out. There's a home in California that became available for us to stay in while we're there. And over this time, we've had many discussions with our kids and our family, and this is a big step, and we've had their full support, and that's been really important to us as well.
So the transition of the directorship was just announced in January of this year, and so we are going to be taking over, like Michelle said, January 2023, but we're going to be down there this entire summer, and I know I'm jumping ahead on some of the information of this, but to begin preparing for that, we started a year ago with Spanish lessons. That's what that Spanish 55 thing is up there. And we do that once or twice, 2-3 times a week online, taking Spanish lessons. I'm really slow on the uptake, so it's not sinking in real quick with me. Michelle's like fluent, and she drives me crazy, but it works really well when we're there. She does all the translating for me, so. But we're going to keep doing that right up until we go, and hope that has sunk in a little bit by the time we get there.
We've been doing a lot of dreaming of why is God calling us
Yeah.
there. And we believe the orphanage does an amazing job of meeting these kids' physical needs and their spiritual needs, but there's a reason why we don't have orphanages in the U.S. And we don't know what this looks like, and we're wanting to be patient and let God reveal it to us. But I think that there probably a lot of work that could be done in helping these kids deal with their trauma and be more successful going into adulthood. And so hoping that our prior experiences and our training is why God's calling us there to make these next steps in doing what's best for the youth, for the kids.
And in order to do that, there's a lot of space stretching that's happened, like figuring out how to trust, because I'm not very good at that. Letting go of control, because I'm not very good at that. Figuring out where to be secure, what our comforts are, all these different big picture things that have been bombarding us over the last few years. And we've seen God in the little things, and we know that the little things makes the big things, but it's not always easy for me to believe that. I'm not a faithful person on the inside. I've come to the conclusion of that, and that's been a very stretching thing. And there's a lot of stuff that we're worried about, how we're going to do this financially. We're going to be sharing the same the two of us are going to be sharing the same salary that Tom's been making as a single person, and that salary is not even enough to cover our yearly expenses. So that's a big deal. Like, to me, that was a huge deal. I'm like, what are we supposed to? How do you do that when we're not even going to make enough money to cover like mortgage and stuff like that? And so we've just jumped into it's going to be taken care of. We'll figure it out. And there's days where I feel really strongly about that, and then there's other days I'm like, we're crazy. I don't know what we're doing, but that's a big stretch. But we also know that we've seen God work in such huge ways in our lives in the last 3 years that there's a part of me that goes, how can I not believe that that's not going to happen again?
And to know that God's opening these doors and drawing us there, then I have to trust that He's going to make those things work out. And I think probably the hardest thing for me is the little Caucasian kid that's in the corner over there. That's our grandson. And that part is our family, and that distance, I think, is where my faith I have to trust that God's still going to bless that, and we can still have close interpersonal relationships with our family while doing His work there in Mexico.
So some of the things that we're committing to, we're getting down to the end here. This has been a long one. Sorry if we're covering too much, but so what we're committing to, we start in January 2023, but we're going to be down there in June of this year, and we're going to be there through the summer, helping the summer groups that come. We have committed to the board a time frame of about 8 to 10 years. We figured it's going to take us 2 years to even figure out what we're doing, at least, and then probably we'll do another 8 or 10 after that, and hopefully be a part of a bigger picture. Some of our responsibilities, we're going to be taking over the financial responsibility for the orphanage. So we're going to be likely traveling across the U.S. asking for contributions and different things like that, doing this kind of stuff a lot more, raising awareness, trying to obtain sponsorships for kids. Right now, a sponsorship for a kid is $250 a month. That's what it costs to take care of a kid. The actual cost that it costs to take care of a kid there is $600 a month. I was looking at the stats last night. It's been $250 a month since 1989. I think it's time to probably raise that dollar amount up a little bit and get a little bit better support going down there. So we're going to be pushing for some of those things. And 600 is minimum. So anyway, we're gonna have to figure out what that looks like and how to do it. That's going to be a difficult task.
It's our role to communicate with, basically we're the liaison with the American groups and the orphanage, so We support the team. When the teams come down in the summer, we make sure they have their groceries, what they need to do their service projects. The kids get a VBS theme for the entire summer, so those kids are getting spiritually fed too. We also maintain the communication with the American sponsors, so if you sponsor a kid, it's our job to make sure you know what's going on. Maybe we tap you by an email and say, hey, this kid's really struggling. Maybe a note of encouragement would be helpful. And then just being in relationship with Patty and Ricardo, supporting them and how they take care of the kids, the day-to-day operations. So we will have a house on the orphanage campus. We also have access to a home in San Diego because we need to come into the U.S. to do the banking, to get the mail, sometimes to get some of the supplies, and so we do have a place to stay, and we'll be fine as far as that goes. But currently, we don't plan to sell our home here in Helena. That may change if we need to support ourselves financially, but right now, whether or not that's something the church could use or one of our children, we're not really sure. We're, again, putting that in God's hands. But this was my slide, our slide of how you can help us. Obviously, we would love and covet your prayers, this big transition for us. We currently are supporting 2 of those boys. That would be wonderful if maybe some of you could come along and help us in that expense, which would help our finances go a little bit further. And if any of you have Sky Miles that you don't ever use and you want to donate them to us so we could fly back home to Montana every once in a while, that would be an easy, encouraging thing too.
We've had people ask about visiting. We're gonna be in charge of the place, so if you want to come visit, well, some of you, Sean, I don't know about you, but if you want to come visit, we will be able to get you there, and we can help you get down there and help you get back across the border and all those different things. So visits we would love that, and just regular encouragement, whether that's through phone calls or Skype or whatever, that would be great too. And then we were talking about there's 2 board meetings every year. We usually do it in the fall, and then we do it in the spring. We've been talking about having one in Montana because everybody from the south, there's a lot of novelty around Montana, and we've talked about having one up here. So if we do that, we'll probably need help in hosting and making that happen in the future too. But there's a lot of ways to support us. Prayer would be the number one thing. And then if we're willing to talk about any of this. If you want to grab us afterwards, if you want to talk to us in email or contact us by phone, whatever that is, we'd be happy to take your support and answer your questions any way that we could. The only other thing that I wanted to do, and this is a obvious verse that everybody would probably know, but it's one of my favorites. It's James 1:27. It says, "A religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this, to look after orphans and widows in their distress and to keep oneself from being polluted by the world." And I don't want to contain it just to orphans and widows because we can identify orphans and widows. We have orphans and widows in our congregation. I feel like an orphan sometimes, and we have widows here. And there's a lot of deep meaning to that verse, and that's the ways we're being stretched. And we hope that stretches you too. So thank you.
Before Cody and Michelle depart this morning, we wanted to have opportunity as a congregation to have prayer over them and to encourage them with this endeavor that God has laid on them. And so, even though we're physically up here and can put hands on them, I wish all of you could come up and do this. So if you feel comfortable coming up here and putting hands on them as we pray, I would love to have that happen. So please, if you feel that need to do that, come forward. Step down. This is an opportunity for us to actually commission them in a way that churches commissioned apostles and disciples to go forth and serve in the first century, much similar. And so let's think of that as we pray for them. Let's pray together. Father God, we are so grateful for the heart that Cody and Michelle have demonstrated in serving you and serving these children. We're grateful, Father, that you have placed that on them, and we know, Father, that through the power of your Spirit indwelling, that you will grant to them, Father, the victory in this, that you will lead them forward, and that they will be able, Father, to be powerful for you. And we know, Father, that all of us struggle. We have our weaknesses, we have our issues, we have our problems. But Father, it is in the honesty that we have to you and our admission of those things that allows us to step forward in faith. And so we ask, Father, that you would bless them as they do. You would bless us as a congregation as we serve them, as they serve you. That you would help us, Father, to understand their needs and the needs of the community that they are going to. And Father, that we could be powerful in our way, that we can help. We ask, Father, that you would bless all of this, that you would nurture them, that you would nurture us in the service to them, and that in all things, Father, your will would be done in this. We thank you for the gift of your Son. We thank you for the word that comes through him, that is shared so effectively in this ministry. And we ask, Father, that you would help us always to be able to focus on who your Son is, who we are in him, and our identity, Father, as we go forward to serve. These things we lift up to you with praise and adoration in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen.
And since we're still standing, if you don't mind standing at this time, let's sing a song, and then Caleb will come up and